I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you, and actually what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me. Today, I'm so excited to be talking to Lisa Petty. Lisa is a shamanic guide, PhD, and occasional throat chakra whisperer for women entrepreneurs, which I'm really excited to learn more about. That sounds amazing. Lisa, I thought I would start by asking you, what was the moment or experience that made you realize that the life that you were living was no longer aligned with your truth?
Ooh, good question. So I think like a lot of women, my sort of come to Jesus moment was when my youngest child was looking at universities. So he was in high school, last year of high school, and he started looking towards, he's leaving me. So excited. I'm going, I'm out of here. And, as a mom, this was my baby, my oldest had already left. And we're like, well, this is what we're preparing them for, right? Our job is to get them the heck out of here. And being faced with the realities, that was crazy because I'm thinking, okay, he's going to be gone. And my responsibility in this is to be okay. And I'm not okay. And, I live by myself with him not here. I live by myself and I'm thinking, okay, literally empty house, empty nest. I don't want to go down any kind of a rabbit hole that I shouldn't go down. So what am I going to do? How am I going to fill my time? And it's sort of lined up. I'm not going to go into detail too much, but it's sort of lined up with my career as a holistic nutritionist, kind of hitting roadblocks. And what I noticed was that the women I was working with weren't doing the things that they said they would do in order to get the results that they wanted to get. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go to grad school. That's what I'm going to do. That'll fill my time. It'll be homework because I still have a job. I'm just going to be busy. So I did that. I went and got my master's degree looking at, I studied behavior change, and my paper was looking at what gets in the way or how do women experience eating, because I was a nutritionist and I learned a bunch of things. And what I learned along the way was, wow, I'm really addicted to this learning thing. So I decided to do my doctorate. And as I was doing that, I started, as I'm compiling my research. So the next level of research was what gets in the way of women taking care of their well-being, period. So it was a self-care study, honestly. Yeah. What gets in the way of midlife women taking care of their well-being? And what came to me going through this process, and anyone who does a doctorate, I don't know about people who do quantitative doctorates in the sense like they're in a lab. I don't know what their experience is like, but anyone who does any other kind of a doctorate that is more qualitative in nature, working with people, there's a very deep personal transformation that takes place while you're doing that kind of work because, you're working with other women like you, asking questions that interest you and all that kind of thing. And as I'm compiling my research and understanding, okay, you know what screwed women up? It was this idea built in the 90s that we can have it all. And have it all means do it all. Do it all means you're exhausted. Do it all means you swallow who you really are. It means that you push through when you're tired. It means you go to the end of the line. It means if your identity is wrapped up in mother, then when your child leaves home, who are you? So this sort of my research mimicked my own transformation. I became very, very aware of how all of these external expectations outside of me had actually sort of propelled me through most of my life. And, I didn't even start my doctorate till I was 50. So think about that, like 50 years of my life, I'm letting other people's definitions of who I'm supposed to be, create my pathway for me. So it was deeply transformational while I was also learning that this is a very universal experience for women of a certain age. I think maybe younger women were doing a better job reflecting reality or truth about who they are to them. I know my daughter doesn't have quite the same pressure on her. And I think even younger women perhaps are being wiser than we are. Maybe, we're sharing what we've learned.
And probably to a degree, the perspectives that have been shared with us, because I was really, as you were talking, I was going, yeah, my mum her role was as a homemaker. She wasn't expected to go to work and be a homemaker and raise the children. And I remember having this conversation with my now ex-husband that this is the first generation of women who are expected to do all of the things and be all of the things. And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about it is it was put out as some kind of sovereignty or autonomy or independence, or look at this beautiful life you have ahead of you. And a couple of problems with that. Nobody took away the other responsibilities. So if you were someone who wanted to be a mother and you wanted to raise a family, you had to do that also. It's not choose. Yeah. And so we know that women still do about 80% of the household labor. We do about 90% of the mental labor, which is, who's going to take Johnny to the dentist appointment? What's for supper? All of those kinds of things. So that's huge. But the other thing, so we're given this sort of carte blanche, oh, you can have it all, sweetheart. And we took it on like, oh, crap, now I have to go have it all. But also nobody said, but what do you want? I mean, you can have it all. Yeah. Here's the entire buffet. Go grab a plate and put on it what you want. Oh, no. We grabbed a plate and we just
all of it on there.
On the plate. And no wonder the plate got heavy and tipped. And sometimes we dropped it and made a mess all over the floor.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So how did you then start to transition from what you were doing academically and, within the corporate logic as well? How did you transition from that more into the space where you are now around that neo-shamanic energy and soulful well-being?
Well, this is funny. And I love the way that God, source, universe, whatever language you like to use for that. I just love the way that works, because here I went and got my doctorate thinking, aren't I a smarty pants? I'm just going to set the world on fire. I'm going to have a doctorate now, yada, 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 yada. The day after, I'm talking less than 24 hours after graduating with my doctorate, I was let go from my 6-figure job. And I'm telling you what, if you want an ego slap, there you go. Here's one for you. You just dedicated 6 years of your life to get your master's degree and your PhD because you think that's going to make you something. Oh no, honey, that's not who you are. So the universe, God took that away from me. I still have whiplash when I think about it. And it was several years ago. And I'm like, well, now what? Why did I do that? What was that all about? And, to make things more challenging, I couldn't replace that work. I had never applied to so many jobs that I didn't even get a call back. Like, it was crazy. And I got to the point, honestly, I'm not even putting the master's degree and the PhD on the resume anymore because I'm like, is this the problem? So anyway, that letting go from that job just pushed me into a dark night of the soul that no amount of thinking was going to get me out of, because I did keep trying to think my way out of that problem. What am I not doing? What is wrong with me? How can I fix this problem? And it took a while, doing that soul work, working with other practitioners. Well, I'll go and have this. Maybe this will help. And, maybe this will help. And it did help going to see other energy practitioners and going to see people who could help me with my soul journey, my spiritual pathway. It helped to heal things a little bit. But I got to the point where it's like, I don't want to keep going to somebody else for this. I want to understand what's happening and how to heal myself on an ongoing basis. About that time, again, God said, here, what about shamanism? And the funny thing about that was I had known about shamanic practice for a really long time. And I had a sense that shamanic practice and learning that was disrespectful to the Aboriginal cultures, right? And I'm like, well, what's the word? Cultural appropriation. I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me as a white woman to be studying this kind of thing. And I caught somebody talking about it, and she was talking about the Incan Medicine Wheel and how this indigenous in Peru were reaching out to civilization because they had sequestered for so long to protect their medicine. And then they realized the world was sick and the world needed their medicine. And so they were actually reaching out for people to come and learn it and take it away and teach it. And so then I felt like this was aligned. This is something that I am allowed. I have permission, I'm being invited to learn this. And it sort of made my whole life make sense because I love gardening. I love native gardening. I love being barefoot on the ground, very interested in nutrition, of course, herbalism, all of these things. So that is one part of my whole life. And then there was a spiritual path, which, I gave you a snippet of it, but I've known my whole life I was on a spiritual journey. It just became a focus when I had no job and no doctorate I was working on. And just parts of it came together. And I went around the medicine wheel, and it was the most healing experience I've had because I was doing it with myself and I was doing the deep learning. I think about Shrek, and I do mean Shrek the ogre, and his brilliance in saying that, being an ogre is like an onion, the spiritual pathway is like an onion. And you think, oh, I've got that nailed now. I've got it. And then God says, oh, no. There's more. Here, have some more. So that it was just a really powerful experience to go through personally. And I did it for myself. And I had no intention of taking the certification at all until about 3/4 of the way through. I went, oh my gosh. So it was a beautiful experience going through, peeling back all of my armor. Who do I think I am? Why do I feel like I have to be this way? That's not me. It feels uncomfortable every time I do that. Why do I do that? Why am I not listening to the discomfort? Why do I push through when I have the rocks in my stomach or I can't breathe? Just, really starting to understand intuition, connection to the universe, connection to each other, how we are all energy and frequency. And, that might sound woo to your listeners, but we've all had that experience when we walk into a room and we just know we walked into an argument, right?
So you've explored a lot about what gets in the way of women's well-being.
Yes.
So what are some of the most surprising things that you've uncovered as part of your research?
I think the most challenging, and this is the most difficult hurdle, I think, for a lot of women to get across, is we have internalized so much of the programming. And I use the word programming intentionally because you think about school, we are taught to go to the bathroom when the bell rings, or we get to eat when the bell rings, or, this television programming that shows us what families are supposed to look like. And dad goes to work every day and mom's always stressed. And the more we see these things, the more we take them on, and we have interactions with people and we're like, oh, when I act like this, I get this reaction. That's uncomfortable. I won't do that again. That's all programming, right? It's learning how to function in the world. And we take a lot of that on. We took on that mantra that we can have it all. And by the way, I'm not saying you can't have it all. I'm saying, do you want it all?
Maybe choose what you put on your plate.
Like, what do you want? Anyway, and I actually say that if you're still asking how to have it all, you're asking the wrong question. The question really is, what do you want? So women have internalized a lot of this, like the perfect mother, the perfect spouse. You have to look good all the time. You have to be the perfect employee or the perfect boss. Like, there's no wiggle room. The standards are so high, and we took it all on and we don't even question it, which is how it gets so overwhelming, how we get into the burnout territory, not just from the doing, but this misalignment with who we really are. And so really becoming aware, oh crap, I had taken in a lot of expectations that aren't even mine.
That quest for perfectionism as well, which is such a non-human possibility. So we're striving to achieve something which we're never going to be able to achieve in any case.
Never. And here's the thing, we don't decide of anybody else. We don't ask it of our children. I have a grandson right now. He's toddling. He's not a year old, so he's not quite perfect walking. Mad at him when he falls down.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
And we don't ask it of our men when they come home from work at the end of the day and they're a little bit grumpy. We're like, okay, you just sit and relax and, replenish, feel better. Yeah. We don't judge that. We don't judge anybody for being imperfect except ourselves. We don't even judge our girlfriends. Like, a girlfriend could come over with her hair in a mess and no makeup, and we're like, oh, honey, I love you. Just sit down.
Yeah, for sure.
We do it to ourselves. So it's, again, even becoming aware, the awareness that we do that, listening to what we say to ourselves.
So how do you think that those societal expectations really silently shape and suppress our true desires and emotional needs. Like you say, we don't judge our girlfriends, but we're judging ourselves by some level of expectation. So what's the impact of that?
Well, if I go back to the first part of your question. We're talking about, again, how did it happen? I think a lot of it is tied to that idea, particularly women coming up in the 80s, 90s with this mantra, you can have it all. We showed up in the corporate world, which is a patriarchal structure. And all that means is that there's somebody at the top who's a boss and he tells everybody else what to do, right? We showed up and we learned how to function there. We learned, leave the intuition at home. There's no crying in the boardroom, honey. So no emotion here. You lead with logic. You lean in, you compete. And so we learn how to be men. We learn how to be men between 9 and 5, 8 and 4, whatever your work schedule was. We learned how to succeed in a man's world, acting like men. And as we did that, and the more we exercised that masculine energy of doing competition, hunting, logic, we suppressed a lot of our gifts. We suppressed our intuition. We suppressed our emotion. We suppressed our empathy. We suppressed collaboration and community. And these things are all our feminine side. And we both have both. Men have both masculine and feminine. We have both masculine and feminine. But women of a certain age learned how to lean into the masculine and let the feminine go and buried it, to the point where we're not sure we have intuition anymore. We're not sure we connected with people anymore. And I personally believe that this is part of where this imposter syndrome feeling comes from, because you aren't being yourself. If you're hiding bits of yourself, then you aren't being authentic. And so, of course, you feel like an imposter because you're pretending all the time. So it takes courage to say, you know what? I'm going to practice connection. I'm going to practice community and empathy, and I'm going to listen to what my emotions have to say. And we have to relearn that, right? Because we suppress them for so long. What do our emotions mean? How do they work? How does my intuition talk to me? This is where I had to learn, because, as someone who immediately went to master's PhD, I'm a smart cookie. I feel like my brain can solve all the problems, right? I learned very quickly that's not true. And I had sort of cut myself off at the net. Now, if you're an overthinker, you know what that means. So I had to reconnect with my emotions. I had to reconnect my head to the rest of my body. And I think a lot of women have to do that too, because we lean so far into the logic.
Yeah. I think particularly where you've been in the corporate world, and like you say, you've had to adapt to thrive and survive in a man's world. It is something that you learn how to do.
Yes.
So what does reclaiming that feminine energy look like and feel like in everyday life? How does it show up?
When you think of feminine energy, you think of Mother Earth, you think of flow, you think of seasons, you think of how day moves into night and, summer moves into fall. And this doesn't mean that the feminine energy is demure. The divine feminine is ferocious and protective and very, very intentional. But we allow what is happening. We don't feel like we have to force things. And imagine what that's like to just go, oh, that's not mine. I'm just going to watch that. Instead of, oh, I got to get in there and fix that. That's going to be a problem, right? So I'm just allowing things to transpire, particularly when they're not yours. It's your kids, it's your partner, it's your employee, whatever. You can sit back and allow them to have their experience. That's part of it. There's a sense of, as I mentioned, like collaboration and community. How can I support you? How can you support me? How can we get mutual benefit out of this relationship, this friendship, this partnership at work? So that true sense of harmony. I don't want to say balance, but harmony. But then there is also harmony between your masculine and feminine energy. So yes, you have to do stuff. We have to do stuff. But in order to conceive and create, which is divinely feminine, we have to be open and receptive and allow, right? So we have to make space for creativity to flow into us. And if we're so busy doing, there's no room for conceiving. There's no room for allowing and receiving and getting that inspiration, which then you move over to the other side and use your masculine energy and create, right? So allowing yourself that opportunity to stop, to rest, to replenish is so divinely feminine. And so we need it as women. We need to be able to do that. Other ways is tapping into and appreciating your intuition. And again, if you think, oh, I don't have any intuition, yeah, you do. You do. You do. Give it an opportunity. Think about a time in your life when you had it and I like to tell the story of meeting a man in a bar, walked in and saw this man. I could see the storm cloud over his head, right? I'm like, whoa, that is a stormy situation over there. And you know what I did? I married him.
Interesting choice.
We're not married anymore. But that was an example of me having an intuitive hit and going, I know better.
It's so interesting you say that, because when we're talking about relationships, I look back on relationships that haven't worked out in my life that I always knew beforehand. And I chose to ignore my knowing and, oh, I know better, like the head, go away. What do you know, intuition? Then I look back on it and reflect on it afterwards. I'm like, oh, I did think that at this
I
point.
remember. And it was such a strong intuitive hit. You still remember it. Come on. And so I think a lot of women can look back on past relationships and have that kind of, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So the trick is to do it every day and notice every day, like simple things. If someone asks you to do something, just don't say yes right away. Don't say no right away. Just sit with it and go, how do I feel about this? And allow the answer to come. Maybe you get heart palpitations. You're like, oh my God, that'd be so much fun. Okay. Or maybe it's just like, don't do it. Don't do it. I have tension in my stomach. This is the wrong way for me to go. And then you can just say, no, that doesn't feel right for me. Thanks for thinking of me. Right. So we have opportunities all the time. And we want to think about ourselves as like an antenna, because even quantum physics is talking about this right now. So if it sounds really woo, it's not. Scientists are studying that we are all energy and we are all frequency and vibration. And we attract things into our life that are, you think about magnets coming together, things that are on the same frequency as us, we bring them into our lives. And that also works with things like ideas. If a creative idea comes to you, it's because you're resonating at the frequency of that idea. And if you shut it down, somebody else is going to pick up that frequency, right? So it works for relationships, it works for ideas, it works for decisions, as long as we become familiar with our frequency and what our frequency and the body as the antenna. So that's where we're going to feel it in our gut, in our heart, and, our breathing, however your intuition hits you, whether you're clairsentient, claircognizant, whatever. Like I just know things. Sometimes I just know things and I'm like, okay, I don't know that because I know it. I know it because I just
came
in my head. So, and that's challenging for intelligent women too, because they think, well, where'd that come from? And should I trust that? It came to you, so trust it.
So what does self-actualization mean to you? And what do you find tends to spark it in people that you're working with?
Sadly, for a lot of people, it's crisis. So something terrible has to happen. A car accident, a loss of a loved one, loss of a 6-figure job the day after you graduate from a PhD. Right. So for a lot of people, it's a tragedy. And so I encourage you not to wait for the tragedy, because if you're starting to have what I call the stirrings, you're starting to have those questions. And at a certain age, we all do. This is in psychology as well. We get to the age of generativity in Erickson's developmental theory. I think it's Erickson's, where we get to a point where we're starting to think about time left and the legacy that we want to have. So it's psychology and it's also spirituality. We start to question, is this all there is? What am I going to be remembered for? I need to have purpose. I've done all the things. I've raised my family. My kids have left home if I had children. That career has ended. That marriage has ended for whatever reason. Blank slate. What do I want to do? And if you're starting to have those inklings, even if you have a great job, even if you're doing something that's okay, if you're starting to have those questions, then follow the trail and don't wait for the tragedy, because I promise you the tragedy will come. You wait for it. It will come. So don't wait for it. Just start doing the work now, asking the questions now. And I love your question. What is self-actualization? It's something that I've been chasing my whole life. And I know this. And I don't know that everybody is, but I've been very conscious for a very long time that I want to color my life all the way to the edges. I say, like, I just want to make sure. That's why I did my PhD at 50. It was like, well, I have this idea that I want to do it, so I should do it. Right. It's just making sure, for me, it's sort of like making sure that when you take your final breath, you went, okay, I did that well. Like, not saying I was perfect or whatever, but I mean, like, if I wanted to do it, I did it. I don't feel like I left anything on the table. So did I push myself to understand this? Did I push myself to become an expert in this area? Did I, jump off a cliff at one time? You know what I mean? Like, did I
have all the experiences and take all the opportunities?
Yes. And also, I think a really key part of, reaching that fullest expression of who you are is to do the deep soul work, because you can't superficially get there. You have to check in to your own soul journey, who it is you are meant to be. And a lot of women come to me and say, I don't know what my purpose is. And I'm going to tell everybody right now what your purpose is. All right, I'm going to save you a whole bunch of money. Your purpose is to be you. You showed up to be the puzzle piece. I showed up to be Lisa. And this is me, my little piece of the puzzle. And if I don't be Lisa, then the puzzle doesn't work. My job here is to be me, not what other people tell me. I don't have to look a certain way. I don't have to act a certain way. I don't have to find the same things funny as you do. I don't have to have the job you tell me. I don't have to keep a job I hate just because I got the golden handcuffs on. I don't have to be married to that guy or that girl anymore. I don't have to be anybody but who my soul says I am here to be, and keep expanding what that is. And that's your purpose. So what you do is not even relevant. Not even relevant as long as you are being who you came to be.
So true. So true. In becoming that, though, for so many of us, often a lot of fear or guilt will show up. So how do you help women who are particularly maybe for the first time putting their own needs first to overcome the fear and guilt that comes along for the ride with that?
So in the work that I do, I get women to follow what I call the wisdom protocol. And it's loosely aligned on the Incan Medicine Wheel, and brings in my doctoral research, and it brings in my dark night of the soul, and it brings in my lived experience. And I do channel wisdom, as I said, like I just get these downloads. And what is required in order for healing to take place is to go through this idea of the wisdom protocol, which is built on 5 elements of grace. And it's just an acronym because I love acronyms and they're easy to remember. And isn't grace a beautiful word? So it involves growth, and growth is sort of the bucket that everything else goes in. Then we have release. So that's about letting go of everything that isn't you. And that is both the easiest and most difficult thing that you're going to do. Because in order to do that, you have to become aware of what is you and what is not you. And that takes some reflection. Then we go into alignment. Then you align with the parts of you that are truly you, and you pour your energy into you, who you are.
Yeah.
This isn't a step-by-step process. It's more like a cha-cha, because the elements, again, are fluid and they move, right? And like Shrek says, you're going to do a little bit here, and then you're going to think you got it, and then this is going to happen, and then you're right back over here, right? Then we move into co-creation, and that is that sense of receptivity, being open, connecting with God, source, the universe, whatever language works with you. It's also co-creation with yourself. So if you get a lovely download, then you have to co-create the thing and bring it into the world, which means you're co-creating with your masculine energy as well. You receive, and then the masculine side of you does. Co-creating with community, family, all of those things. So that's the co-creation part. And then embodiment, which is, again, this idea we are in a body, so we need our bodies to be as healthy as possible, both so that you are a pristine channel for this co-creation that's going on, but also this is what gets you through the world. And, if this is as healthy as possible, then you're going to be able to color to the edges just a little bit more. But embodiment is also about putting into practice those decisions that you've made. So you're going to be firmer with your boundaries because you understand that integrity is a priority for you right now. And then finally, we have embodiment. And again, that is about having your body be as healthy as possible because you're a pristine channel for wisdom, right? And the cleaner it is, the less interference there is from pollution outside of you, from food choices, that kind of thing, the clearer your channel is. And it's also about putting your decisions into practice. So embodying who you said you are. So if you've made a choice that integrity is your highest value and you're going to protect boundaries about your integrity, then that's embodiment. So it's just not this theoretical, oh, I've made a choice. It's actually putting it into practice, because that's the only way that we rebuild those neural pathways in our brain. Now I'm putting my PhD hat on. In order to create new habits, right? We have to actually do something different in order to create those new neural pathways. So that's how the grace elements work inside the wisdom protocol. But it's just a lovely way of describing what the process is. And you asked the question about shame. And that, again, there's two things I wanted to say about that. That's programmed into women because it's a way to control us. Yeah. So be conscious of shame. It's one of the lowest frequency energies that there is. If you look into the map of consciousness, like it's at the bottom.
So I think we share a belief that women in their authentic power have the ability to change the world. So for you, what does that look like when that power is fully alive?
So have you heard Gloria Steinem's famous expression that she foresees an army of gray-haired ladies quietly taking over the world? Have you heard that?
I haven't heard it, but it's absolutely right.
Yes. And so I think, why do we have to be quiet? Whatever. And I also think, well, my hair's not completely gray yet, so
mine is.
Also that. But still, the value or the point is that it's going to be the mature women who step into our wisdom, who are going to be the ones that right this ship. And my personal mission is to inspire 1 million women. And it's a BHAG, right?
Yeah.
To step into the truth of who they are. Because my belief is that when you are being fully authentic and you put out the frequency you're supposed to be putting out, right? You are being that piece of the puzzle. Yeah. And when you slot into your place on the puzzle board, then the people around you go, what's that? What's happening over there? Yeah. And so again, I mean, it's a cliche, but we put the ripples out into the world and we inspire other people to go, well, wait a minute, if she's doing X, Y, Z, and if she is being the fullest expression of who she is, then what does that mean for me? And going back to that idea is of your purpose here is to be you, fully you. Then if everybody is being fully them, I had this sound of click, 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 is just all going to click into place. Yeah. And then maybe as a culture, maybe as a society, we're not going to be brainwashed and manipulated and swayed so easily away from what is true, because we know what is true for us.
So if you could give every woman listening to this a sacred permission slip, what would it say?
It is okay to be you. I promise you that once you start letting go of what you think other people think of you, because honestly, here's a little secret. People don't think about you nearly as much as you think that they think about you. I mean, a few people do. Your partner does, maybe your kids do, but even your kids are like, if you're not making dinner, they're really not paying attention. You have permission to change the focus from external to you to internal to you, because that's where the answer is. If you are struggling with, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? I don't even know who I want. My body isn't cooperating. I'm feeling frustrated. I think at midlife, women feel bored, frustrated, angry. They don't know. Like I called it technically meh. I have to do this for 30 more years. Like, ugh. So if you're feeling any of those feelings, the answers are not out there. That's what my journey showed me. The answers are not out there. The answers are in here, and you know it.
That's the biggest lie that we've been sold, isn't it? That the answers are out there, and to not look in here because you can't trust that intuition, and unlearn that lie. And to know actually out there is the falsehoods and in here is the truth. That's got to be the meaning of life almost, hasn't it?
And, it's funny. I just came to terms recently with this idea of, I I struggled when in my writing even, or when I would see other people say the truth of your truth. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, isn't there just one truth? And finally, I got sort of an understanding one day of what your truth means. And it's simply being the fullest expression of who you are. So it's not about fact.
Yeah.
You know, when you hear that expression, oh, you know, I'm following my truth. It's not woohoo. I mean, it's maybe weird language, but really what it means is you are just following your own internal compass, has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with what's happening out there. Should I vote left or right? Should I vote red or blue? Should I, like, it's not about that kind of stuff. It's just really, are you aligned? Are you being true to yourself, to who you are, who you came here to be when you showed up? You showed up saying, I'm going to be Lisa. I'm going to be Helen. I'm going to be Joan. Are you being her? That's what the truth is.
So true. Oh my goodness. This has been an amazing conversation. Really interesting perspectives and truths that you've really shared with us today. And I'm sure everyone listening is going to get so much from this conversation. So really appreciate your time and your perspective on everything that we've spoken about.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.